All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the movie edition of the SJP Files. I am your host, SJP, and we are back with the Zack Snyder Justice League. Yes, round of applause for Zack. But with that being said, this is part 3, Beloved Mother, Beloved Son. Where we start out in part 3 is the introduction of one Barry Allen in Central City. Now, this scene was in the initial trailer for the Justice League in, 2016, I want to say. This movie came out, the theatrical cut came out in 2017, but this scene was essentially completely cut from the movie for whatever reason. I thought at the time we meet Barry Allen we don't meet Barry Allen until Bruce sits down in his favorite chair in the first theatrical cut. In this cut, this is where we meet Barry Allen, and you kind of get a sense of his personality. His propensity to be late on a regular occasion, his kind of just quirky, I wouldn't say quirky personality, but his personality of, a guy who, when he's nervous, just kind of can't stop talking, which I liked. He's a little out there. He's a little, kind of in his own head a lot. And this scene kind of gives you a brief visual of what Barry's powers are and kind of how they work. You have the introduction of Iris West. We don't actually call her Iris West, but she's Iris. They have this kind of like a little meet cute where they're kind of just staring at not staring at each other. Their eyes kind of meet, and it's kind of just this moment. And it happens a couple times when she's driving away. And then you have the truck driver driving in the middle of the city, drops his sandwich. And when he's bending down to pick it up, he's not paying attention to the road, runs a red light, and Iris hits his truck, and then you get Barry activating his powers. Her car starts crinkling, and Barry activates his powers and kind of just bursts out of his sneakers, which, in retrospect, he probably should have burst out of his entire clothes if he was going to burst out of his sneakers, but once again, suspension of disbelief. Puts his finger through the glass, like I said in the initial trailer. Great scene. Great, display of what Barry's powers actually are and what they do and how they work. And you get to see how delicate he is with her, which makes sense given what his powers are. If he were to move too quickly, he could severely injure her, or move her too quickly, he could severely injure her. Now, him, brushing her hair out of her face it was cute. I thought it was cute in the moment. Now that I've heard other people talk about it, maybe slightly a little creepy, but at the moment. Now, when he picks up the hot dog near her face, I'm not gonna lie, I had a really bad feeling the initial time I watched it. I was like, oh my God, what is he gonna do with that hot dog? Now, thankfully, he doesn't actually do anything with it. Thank God. Thank God he doesn't do anything with it. But like I said, after he puts the hot dog in his pocket, I thought he was just going to eat it. Because, Barry's powers require him to take in a large amount of calories and sugar. Mainly because his powers they just burn up so much energy. So he gently places Iris on the ground. He's standing there. They're both looking longingly into each other's eyes. She gives him a smile, and he runs away back to the dog shop where he's applying. Truck driver just realizes he fucked up in a profound way. And then you have Barry. This was actually like one of the funniest scenes in the movie. I know people like to say Zack Snyder movies have like no humor. This is one of those scenes that I thought was funny. Him, working with the dogs kind of like crawling all over him after the hot dog. This was a good scene for Ezra Miller's Flash. This was just a fantastic scene that introduces the character and introduces his powers in a very like simple way. He's fast, and when he's moving, time itself, because it doesn't look like he's actually moving fast. It just looks like when he activates his powers, the rest of the world just slows down. From his eyes, everything else just slows down, and from our eyes, if you were watching him, it would be like he speeds up. But after this scene, we cut to Steppenwolf and the parademons dragging like Atlanteans out of the ocean, which is cool visual. And Steppenwolf asks one of the Lantean guards, "Where's the mother box?" A Lantean guard, puffs out his chest. No Lantean would, betray their people. And then we got this weird, he throws the guard hits a rock. It feels like, he like shatters this dude's spine. And then you get like this weird like spider thing that jacks itself into this dude's mind and projects his memories. Now, I don't really have a comic book, reference for this creature, but it seems like it's part of Steppenwolf's armor itself. Guard says, "I'll never betray my people." He projects like the memory of this thing. It looks like it jacks up the guard's mind too. And then after this scene, we get that scene was very much not in the movie. Another really good scene for Steppenwolf. I mean, you gotta build up these villains. Even if it's a little bit, you gotta make us care about them in some way, shape, or form. And after the whole scene, and after their first scene with Desaad, you know why Steppenwolf's doing what he's doing. He just wants to be able to go home. And this is another scene that proves how far he's willing to go to do that. So yes, you actually start to care. After this scene, we get a short scene with Lois, who I do not believe this scene was also in the movie either. There's no dialogue. It's just Lois kind of holding on to Superman's cape, to Kal-El Clark, to his cape. It's like I said, no dialogue in this scene. She's kind of just going through his things, and you just see like the sadness on her face. And then we cut to Bruce and Diana kind of talking about the other metahumans they've met. Metahumans, they're looking for. First, there's Arthur Curry. You get the more, less. Probably said less. He said no scene that was in the movie. And then you get a bit of an extended version of that scene where they're talking about where Diana's talking about if they can, trust Arthur. And then they both kind of, adorably reach for the mouse at the same time. Which, if you know anything, that I'm a fan of the Diana-Bruce relationship. I've always been a fan of it in the comics or in like the Justice League cartoon. I've always been kind of a fan of their kind of like sexual tension, for lack of a better term. Always been a fan of it. Love it. After this scene where they're looking at, Barry Allen and like video of Barry Allen in the convenience store from BVS, and the Cyborg scene from BVS where he's actually being transformed into Cyborg from the mother box. Then we cut to Cyborg. Another scene, not in the movie, where we get a scene of Cyborg, star quarterback of Gotham. What is that? Gotham City University, GCU. We get a nice little football play from Victor. Cold, snowy weather. I actually really like this scene. This shows kind of what Victor is all about as both a person, phenomenal athlete, and from that scene you also get a scene where we meet Victor's mom, who's also not in the theatrical cut of this movie, where Victor hacked in. You realize from the I'm searching headmaster or like dean from Gotham University, that Victor hacks in. That Victor, you find out Victor is a certified genius, hacks in to the grading scale to help another student, and you get Victor's mom saying, he helped her out because he's got a good heart after she had lost her parents. I'm guessing in the whole Metropolis thing with Zod. And you get his mom asking, he did that because he's got a good heart, and what the hell did you do for her? So it's fantastic. This was a really informative scene on Victor to show just kind of what kind of person he is. And once again, it's not a scene you get in the theatrical cut. It's not a scene you get in the theatrical cut. You kind of just meet Victor when I think the first time you actually see Victor Stone, I think it's at the beginning of the movie for like a short scene, and then you see him again when Diana and Bruce are talking by the lake, and then the next time you see him is when, Diana goes to meet him, and that's pretty much it. You don't really learn anything about him in the theatrical cut. I mean, you learn nothing. And the scene when, after he scores a touchdown, he runs in for a touchdown. Victor notices that his dad's, he's, hyped. He's screaming. He's yelling with his teammates. And then he notices his dad's not there. And just the look of just dejection and just the look of irritation on his face. The fact that his father's not there. And then in the car ride with his mom, he's talking. Mom's just as busy, but she's always there. She's essentially making excuses for Silas. But, Victor says, you're just as busy as he is, and you never miss anything. You never miss a game. You never miss anything. You're always there for me. And Silas just never shows up. And you can see that it really hurts Victor that his father just isn't there at his events. And then you get the car accident. It looked like they got hit by a truck. So Victor's mom dies, and Victor is essentially completely crippled in this accident. He loses both of his arms. He loses both of his legs. This accident just completely destroys him, and you have Silas in the hospital over him crying, I won't let you die like this. And we're assuming this is how Silas eventually goes over to using the mother box to make Victor the way that he is now. And after that little flashback scene we're back in present day, and Silas is talking to Victor, trying to get Victor to go out into the world like his mother would have wanted him to. And his mother would have wanted him to, step out into the world. But Victor's not talking to Silas. So Silas leaves Victor essentially a Walkman, kind of explaining Victor's power, which is another scene. Man, you don't hear this a lot in the second half of this movie. You don't hear a second scene of Victor, of them not explain, in the theatrical cut, there's no explanation of what Victor can actually do. Once again, if you're a comic fan, you know exactly what Victor could do, or at least you have a rough idea of what his powers will be. And this, you got nothing. And in this tape, you realize that his physical alterations are just the tip of the iceberg of what he can do. We get kind of him attempting a similar to Superman's first flight. It's not as iconic, obviously, to the first fight of Superman in Man of Steel. But in this scene, you kind of get Victor, trying to, testing his limits of his physical body, trying to see if he can fly, and him, kind of just, flexing his propulsion jets, essentially. And you get, after that, you kind of jump back inside, and you get the scene of Victor kind of just connecting to the internet and realizing that Victor has essential complete control of any electronic device on, like, he can like tap into any digital network on the planet, as for him it's like breathing. It requires no real effort. He just thinks about it and he can pretty much do it. And then you have like him traveling into cyberspace, and then you get like Victor without the cyber parts. It's kind of like how he sees himself in the universe. You realize that Victor can control the entire nuclear arsenal of every planet, of every, nation on this planet, and could launch every single one of them with just a thought. Then we jump back. Victor is still, trying to fly, and then you get like the stock market bull and the bear. I forget. I don't know what the bear symbolizes, but you realize Victor can control like the financial infrastructure, essentially at will, bankrupt pretty much any country he wanted to, or bankrupt the entire planet if he wanted to. And then you get Victor's essential like first flight into the sky, and then you get the helmet class over his face, which is a scene which, once again, this whole thing is cut from the theatrical cut. This whole scene is not in the theatrical cut of the movie. Victor steps back into cyberspace. He steps into the bank. You get to see what he can. This scene shows the duality of what he can physically do in the real world and what he could do in cyberspace. And you can see him in the banking system, kind of just watching, all these people with all these piles of money. And then Victor kind of just keys in on one person. This maid, I don't know if it's a maid or this woman, mother of Essential 2. She's a waitress. He's kind of seeing her life. She's a waitress, trying to make ends meet for her kids. He sees that this woman, even though she's trying to work hard, she still, donates a little bit to like this homeless musician. What little she has to like this homeless musician. This lady has like maybe $100 to her name, and she's still trying to make this life for her children. Yeah, I don't even think she got $100. I think she got like $25 in her like $30 total between her checking and savings account, from what I was seeing on the screen. And you have her trying to, just trying to provide for her kids, and you see her getting essentially evicted from her apartment. And Victor sees this, and you get to see a little bit of what Victor can do when he just essentially just drops $100,000 into this woman's bank account. Like, just him, doing a little bit. Just, he legitimately just, puts his hands over it and drops $100K into this lady's bank account like that. And then we cut back to the real world, out of cyberspace, and Victor is in person checking up on this woman to see like her reaction to the, and then on the ATM, Victor puts a little, you have won the Gotham City Bank $100,000, special customer prize. Just like I said, just drops $100,000 into this lady's bank account, which, I mean, if you're struggling, $100K could legitimately change your life. And that's what he does for this woman. He essentially just changes her life. $100,000 into her bank account like that. And this whole scene that's not in the theatrical cut shows you just what kind of person Victor is. And this scene, there's no justification for the scene not being in the theatrical cut of this movie. There's no justification. I don't care if you're trying to cut time. There's no reason you should cut this scene. None whatsoever. We cut back. Victor is listening to the tape, and the second part of the tape's about to come up, where Silas starts talking about Victor like a scientist and tries to talk to Victor as a father, and Victor crushes the tape. He's not trying to hear it. He's still pissed at his father for doing this to him. Yes, he saves his life, but in a way where Victor is still considered dead to the rest of the world. And he's still not and he's still not, he still hasn't forgiven his father for that. Especially for like not being at Victor's, games and stuff like that. So Victor's still pissed. Next, we cut to the scene of Barry Allen visiting his father in prison. If you know anything about the Barry Allen story, Barry Allen's father is wrongfully convicted for killing Barry's mother. And, Henry Allen is in prison for a murder he essentially did not commit. So Barry, this scene is just Barry and his father talking about Barry kind of going into criminal law, and Barry in all these kind of like dead end jobs. Next, you got Barry, after visiting his dad, we get the scene that initially introduces Barry in the theatrical cut of Justice League. Barry walks in home, and Bruce is sitting there on his second favorite chair. And this scene is, once again, not even almost, it's exactly the same scene. And when Bruce throws his batarang at Barry, Barry catches it, ask him if he's the Batman, and he, I don't know how to describe it, and he kind of, and he's talking to him, and Bruce kind of gets a feel of what Barry's abilities are. You're fast. Barry says that feels like an oversimplification, which is Barry's not just fast. When Barry's at his fastest, he literally screws with time, which is why he tries very hard not to do it. And then you get another scene of, and in this scene you get a sense of what Barry needs. When Barry says he needs friends, he doesn't actually need friends. He doesn't need normal friends. He needs people like him. People who either have powers or understand what it's like to have powers. He needs people like Superman and Diana and Cyborg and Aquaman and Batman. He needs people who understand what it's like to be different. Like different in a way most people could never really understand. And that's why Barry is so, I'm in. Yeah, I don't need like a long soliloquy. I don't need you to talk me into this. I'm in. I'm just in. And then we get another, scene with Bruce's wealth. Barry asks Bruce what his powers are. Barry's kind of explaining to Bruce what the Speed Force is and how it affects his caloric intake, essentially. And then you get this beautiful car. I'm not a car person, but this car is fucking beautiful. It's like one of those, once again, they're just like opulent wealth. And Barry asks Bruce what his superpowers are, and Bruce says, a little funny line, I'm rich, which is true. That's his superpower. He's one of the richest people on the planet, can buy and make pretty much anything. The man spends millions of dollars like it's nothing because the money is just a tool to use to facilitate the mission. And we get a little cute scene with Diana making tea with Alfred, and Diana being 5,000 years old. To Alfred fidgeting. Diana still can't make a good cup of tea despite being 5,000 years old, and Alfred is freaking out. And then we get the scene where, Alfred is making Bruce gauntlets, and Diana's looking for Victor Stone, and Victor essentially hacks into Batman's computer and tells Diana to meet him at a specific place. And we get the Cyborg drop-in scene where he flies in, and I don't think this scene isn't exactly the same as the movie. I don't think he drops in the theatrical cut. I think he walks out of the shadows in the theatrical cut. But Cyborg blacks out the entire city, essentially blocks out the entire block, and Diana asks Victor to, help the world, and Victor says, fuck the entire planet. Because I think Victor's just still pissed. He's still angry. I think it's only been like a year since Victor has been this, and I think he's still coming to terms with who and what he is. And he still hasn't come to terms with it. He's still kind of just angry at the entire planet. And you have Diana trying to convince Victor, you need to come back. You need to come back. The world needs you. We need you. And we have Victor essentially burying the mother box. Victor says essentially no, leaves, and we have Victor essentially burying the mother box at his own grave. At the grave of him and his mother. And Victor's, Victor is kind of essentially technically dead to the rest of the world. And with this scene, you got Victor, I figured. You got Victor. After this scene, you have another scene, once again, cut from the movie. A scene that's going to come back into play where Silas and Ryan Choi are like superheating a piece of the Kryptonian ship. And we had a like little cute line from Ryan Choi. This thing is now the hottest thing on Earth. Hits it with, I think, like a particle accelerator. And hey, this is the hottest thing on Earth. And that's what I said to my prom date. And she promptly broke up with me. And really, this was a really weird scene. It wasn't a weird scene. This was a good scene that, pays off later on in the movie. But that little line was weird. And then we have Silas going back home and then him getting essentially kidnapped by the parademon because he's been so close to the mother box. Parademon, grabs him. And then we cut back to Gotham. And our first introduction into J.K. Simmons as Commissioner Gordon. Fantastic. J.K. Fantastic casting, fantastic scene. And we have, Silas getting, dropped off with the other hostages, including the janitor and Gotham Harbor. And then we cut to a scene of Bruce coming off off his like military transport. I'm still going to call it that. And Barry meeting Diana for the first time. And then you have, after this scene, you have Commissioner Gordon lighting the back signal up in the sky. And Barry's like, Barry is so excited in this scene. He's just like, this is like the coolest thing I've ever been a part of. And then we cut to the Atlantis mother box. And we get Mira once again talking in that horrendous British accent. I don't know who told her to make that choice or who allowed her to make that choice, but it's a really bad choice. That's one of those things from the Whedon cut I'm about, because every time I hear this ridiculous accent, it kills me. And then we kind of get when Mira is talking underwater, there's two ways. You kind of hear like this kind of like echo, like dolphin sound when she's talking to one of her guards underwater. And then she creates like an air bubble to talk to another one of the guards in English. This air bubble thing, I'm not a fan of. If this is because we had the air bubble earlier in the movie when Arthur was talking to Volko, I'm not a fan of this scene. I'm a fan of the scene itself. I'm not a fan of the air bubble thing. I think they should be able to like talk normally underwater. I think we should hear like a scene where it's like them talking in like their language, and then it translates with like subtitles for a quick minute, and then it translates to English. But we understand that they're speaking a completely different language underwater instead of just speaking English. That's one of those things in the Aquaman movie that I kind of like had an issue with. In this issue, I don't have an issue with it. Then after that, the air bubble dissipates. They hear a sound, air bubble dissipates, and then boom tube, and we get our Steppenwolf and Lantean fight. This scene also very similar to the theatrical cut, but by no means the same. Once again, Steppenwolf, far more brutal in this moment, and apparently Steppenwolf can breathe underwater. Yay! But the blood in this scene where Steppenwolf is like crushing these guys, and he's cutting them in half and like bludgeoning them against each other. And you can see like the blood in the water looks fantastic. And then we have the same scene where Mirror like creates like a gigantic air bubble underwater, which, you know, reintroduces gravity. And Steppenwolf falls. Like, he's got to fall like 40, 50 feet. It's wild. And then he attacks her. And then once again, the air bubble here doesn't do it for me when she's talking to him. And then it looks like she's like pulling like the moisture out of his face, like pulling the water and the moisture out of his face, and then like and then she starts essentially like pulling blood from his face, his eyes, his mouth, and then he like chucks her away and she hits the ground hard. And then like he like takes a second to gather himself, and then his armor kind of grows back over his face. And just as he's about to essentially chop Mirror's head off, Arthur comes out of nowhere, saves her, and we get their kind of like first meeting. Or they like first meet each other. She obviously recognizes who he is, and then we get the Arthur Steppenwolf fight in the middle of the ocean, going toe to toe. This scene is almost a shot for shot, you know, same as the theatrical cut. It's very, very similar. Fights the same. It's basically the same fight. There's not real much of a difference. After this, we get Steppenwolf, you know, beats Arthur, takes the second mother box, boom tubes away. And then we get the Arthur Mirror conversation, which is essentially, once again, same conversation. It just doesn't end the same way. Arthur doesn't really say much. And then Mirror tells him it's his responsibility to go stop that thing. And he doesn't like turn back and say, I need you to do something for me. He just leaves. And then we get and then Victor comes home and realizes that somebody took his dad. That these like parademon things took his dad. And then Steppenwolf takes the second mother box back to like the wall, puts it back into the wall. And then we get, I believe he gets another conversation with Desaad after this. And like you get the mother boxes like fluctuating, and then the mother box essentially creates a force field around his chosen like little place. And in retrospect, you can probably see that this would probably create, you know, some issues. You know, people would notice that a dome just appeared on the freaking planet. So, like I said, another conversation with Steppenwolf and Desaad. Steppenwolf, once again, another symbol not in the movie, still does so much for Steppenwolf. They're searching. He tells Desaad they're searching for the third mother box. Desaad tells Steppenwolf, go interrogate the prisoners that you've captured. Find the third box. And Steppenwolf says, you know, tell me what they know or I'll rip it from them. Assuming with his little spider friend. And then that is the end of part 3. Beloved mother, beloved son. And after that, we get to Steppenwolf. And after that, part 4, Change Machine. Yes. Oh, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, I'm giving myself a round of applause because I ain't gonna lie. That was a little hard to get through. That scene, that whole part wasn't hard to get through, but me talking about it was hard to get through. Man, because I've never done like a blow by blow like that. When I talk sports, I usually kind of just get, well, mainly because I've been into sports longer than I've really been into movies like this. But still, doesn't change the fact that thank you guys so much for listening to this show. I had a couple downloads of the first 2 episodes. Like I said, I'm so thankful for that. But this is episode 3 of the Zack Snyder Justice League review. I'm your host, SJP. Thank you for listening, and I'll put another episode up for part 4, Change Engine, tomorrow.